Hey everyone, Gabriel here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you guys everything that you need to know about Facebook ads for dropshipping and e-commerce in 2019. So I'm going to be sharing the exact strategy that I've personally used on my stores to scale brand new products to over 6 figures in sales in just a few months. So this strategy is super valuable and you can use it for any physical product. So whether you're a brand, whether you're a dropshipper, the strategy is pretty much the same. So I really hope you guys enjoy this video. Also, if you're new around here, please make sure to subscribe. I drop valuable videos like this one all the time. And if you need any help, you can also join our Facebook group, first link in the bio, and then you can ask any questions and get some help from the community. Alright, so before we get started, I just want to show you guys a little bit of proof that I do know what I'm talking about and that I have tested a lot of this stuff myself before sharing it with you guys. So this is a relatively new ad account. It was started in July for a brand new store, so it was a new store and a new pixel. And since then, we've spent a little over $400,000 on ads. And we've achieved a return on ad spend of 1.92, so that's not that great, but it was still really profitable for this store, and actually it was a little bit higher than 1.92 because a lot of these conversions didn't track properly. So yeah, so you guys get the point. This is just one of my ad accounts. In total, I've probably spent about $1 million on Facebook ads testing a lot of stuff. So in this video, I'm just really going to be sharing what I've learned and what works for me and what I've determined to be the best blueprint to launch and scale a product in 2019 using Facebook ads. So let's get right into it. Alright, so first off, a couple basic things that you need to have set up before we can even start. You need to have your pixel installed on your store and your page created for your store. So you can use a brand new pixel, that's fine, but just make sure that you install the pixel right away just so we can start collecting data right from the start. And obviously you want to have a page because you need a page to advertise from. Another thing you'll want to do right from the start is customize your column set on Ads Manager because by default it's really not optimized for e-commerce. Just to quickly show you guys what I mean with the columns, so this is by default what the columns would look like on your Ads Manager, and this is the performance column set made by Facebook. And you know, it has a lot of the stuff that you need to see, so you can see your results, which is usually the number of purchases, your cost per result, your amount spent, and all that. But you really don't have all the information that you could be looking at and using to evaluate the performance of your campaigns. Alright, so now in comparison, I actually pulled up the column set that I like to use on my Ads Manager, and you can just pause the video if you want to copy mine, and then just click columns, customize columns, and you can add all these columns, and you'll have the exact same column set as me. So this column set might seem a little bit overwhelming at first, and if you don't really know what these things mean, it can be confusing, but this actually helps having all this pulled up. So the first thing that I like to add is the CPM column right here, and this is basically how much you're paying for 1,000 impressions. And this will depend on your targeting and also on your video ad or whatever ad you're using, how engaging that ad is. So it's a good metric to keep track of, because if you see your CPM skyrocketing, that can indicate that maybe your ad's been seen too many times, or you know, your targeting's off. So it's an important metric to keep track of, and you definitely want to pull that up on your column set. Another thing that I really like pulling up on my column set is these 4 columns right here. So the website content views, website add to cart, websites checkout initiated, and website purchases. So what this does is it basically gives you an overview of the whole funnel on your website, right? So when people get targeted by your ads, the first step is for them to view your website's content. So this column right here tells you how many people actually viewed your content for the amount you paid for, right? And then it funnels down to add to cart. Out of the people who viewed your content, only so many are going to add to cart. So then you can see, okay, so about 15% of people added to cart. And then from there on, you can see, okay, 66% of people initiated checkout. And then from there, 50% of people actually bought the product. So you can actually keep track of your whole funnel straight from Ads Manager and look at different campaigns and compare the funnel. And you can basically troubleshoot your campaigns this way. So it's really useful to have these columns pulled up. Another thing that I pulled up here is the cost per link click. So this is a really easy metric to keep track of if you already have some data on your site. So for example, if you know that on average each visitor will bring you $1.5 in revenue, and you know that you need at least a 2.0 return on ad spend, you would be looking at a 75-cent cost per click in order to be profitable. Alright, so once you've set up your column set, there's a few more things you need to know about Facebook ads before you start advertising. So a lot of you might already know this, but I'm assuming that a lot of people watching this video are going to be beginners, and this is really important to understand. So the first thing is that the Ads Manager is set up in folders. So the top level is campaign, and then you have ad sets within that campaign, and then within ad sets you have multiple ads. And then the campaign determines the objective. So let's say you want website conversions, that is set at the campaign level. And then your ad sets define the targeting and the budget. So it's just a really important thing to understand, just so you're not confused when you go through the Ads Manager. That's how it's set up. Another thing is you need to understand that it's a bidding system. So Facebook ads doesn't really provide consistent results because there's a lot of external factors. It depends how many people are targeting the same audience as you. So if there's a lot of people who are targeting the same audience, the CPM for that audience, which is the cost per 1,000 impressions, is going to be a lot higher than if you target an audience that no one wants to target. So that's why if you target worldwide, for example, you'll get really cheap traffic. But that's because no one wants to target that audience because they don't actually make any purchases, right? But if you target the United States, for example, which is an audience that spends a lot online and that is known to purchase a lot of things, the CPM is going to be a lot higher because there's a lot of people targeting that audience for the reasons I just mentioned. So once you've got the basics down, the next step is to do some audience research so that you know who to target when you start running ads. So Facebook lets you target based on interests and behaviors. And interests are not always relevant, and this is an important thing that you need to know. And one way that you can better understand interests is by seeing what interest Facebook has actually tagged you with. So if you go to this URL right here, facebook.com/ads/preferences, it'll give you a list of the interests that Facebook has tagged you with. And this is really interesting to kind of get a feel for how relevant these interests actually are. So this is my Facebook account here. And as you can see, these are the interests that it tagged me with. So ketone, I don't even know what this is. It's some sort of chemical, and apparently this is one of my interests. So as you can see, not relevant at all. Interior design, also not really relevant. I'm not really big into interior design, so that's why sometimes interests aren't relevant. Now if you go over here, this is relevant: dropshipping, Expedia, sure, because I travel, property, online advertising, Amazon, Audible. So you know, a lot of these are kind of relevant, and some of these just aren't really relevant at all, like ketone and interior design. So check those out for yourself, see what you're tagged with, and it'll give you a feel for why Facebook interests aren't always necessarily accurate. So one way that you can fight these interests not always being the most relevant is with flex targeting, and this image actually does a great job of explaining what that means. So if you were trying to target golf enthusiasts, you could start off by targeting just the Tiger Woods interest, right? But a lot of people know who Tiger Woods is who aren't actually interested in golf, right? So Tiger Woods would give you non-golfers pretty much. It would be a completely non-relevant audience. Maybe you'd have a little bit more golfers than usual, but it would just be a broad general audience. Now if you wanted to narrow it down to casual golfers, you could flex target both Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson. So this would mean that your audience would need to match a Tiger Woods interest, but also match a Phil Mickelson interest. So by doing that, now you know that you have people who are definitely more interested in golfing than just the average person who knows who Tiger Woods is, right? But now if you want to go really specific and you want to target people who are golf enthusiasts, you can actually stack all three. So people who know who Tiger Woods is, who know who Phil Mickelson is, and who also know who Bubba Watson is. And the way that they put it is a golf enthusiast would know who Bubba Watson is, but no one else would. So this is an interesting trick. This image is from Digital Marketer, and I thought it did a great job at explaining it. Alright, so just to show you this example in practice, I actually went ahead and created a new ad set. And as you can see, right now I'm just targeting Tiger Woods, and in the United States, 18 to 65 plus. And as you can see, our potential reach right now is 5.7 million. So we have a pretty broad audience, and most of these people would probably be non-golfers, because just because you know Tiger Woods, it definitely doesn't mean that you're a golfer. So now if we wanted to narrow it down one bit, we could go narrow audience and then add Phil Mickelson right here. So now it must match Tiger Woods and must also match Phil Mickelson. And now you can see our audience went from like 5 million to 270,000, right? So now we have a much more narrow audience of people, and these are probably casual golfers if they're interested in both these athletes. And now if you wanted to narrow it down even more to really golf enthusiasts, you can narrow further once more, and then you can type Bubba Watson. And now as you can see, our audience went down to 65,000 people. But people who are interested in Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, and Bubba Watson, it's a pretty good chance that they're golf enthusiasts. So that's how flex targeting works, and that's how you can stack interests to get a very targeted audience. So you want to do some audience research right off the bat to find some interests that you can start targeting when you're launching your campaigns. So there's two main methods that I like to use. Number one is common sense. So for example, if you're selling makeup, don't go and target men. You'll probably have a much higher cost to deliver those ads, right? So if you're selling makeup, target women. If you're selling like skiing gear, target northern countries, right? So you can use your common sense just to know who your audience is. But another great way to find out potential audience to target is using audience insights. So to get to the audience insights tool, all you need to do is just go to your ads manager, click the menu, and then right under the plan thumbnail you have the audience insights. And this tool basically lets you create saved audiences and just explore different audiences based on the data that Facebook has publicly. So it says choose an audience to start. So let's just say everyone to start, and then you can pick the countries. So let's say United States. And so for example, just to give you guys an example on how I would use this, let's say you're trying to sell women's leggings, right? What I would probably do to start off is I would think who's the biggest competitor in women's leggings, because what you're trying to do is find data on who you should be targeting. So let's say you're selling women's leggings. I'd say probably Lululemon is one of the biggest competitors, right? So what you can do is you can go to this interests here and type in Lululemon, and there you go. Now, not every company is going to be in these interests. You need to have a relatively big company, so you need to look at your big competitors, really the major competitors, because your direct dropshipping competitors won't be listed as an interest, right? So let's just go with the Lululemon example, and then age range, just leave that blank because that's what we're trying to find out. Location, United States. If you're planning on selling to more countries, you could add them, so like United Kingdom, Canada, Australia. That's usually like the 4 biggest countries you'd be selling to. And then now this is when we have all the data of this audience. So this audience is people in these 4 countries from 18 to no max on the age and who are interested in Lululemon. Now what we can do is we can click all these tabs to get information about this audience. So first off, what this tells us is that it's 82% women, 19% men. So if you're selling leggings, your biggest market's definitely going to be women. You could have probably figured that out by yourself, but you know, this just confirms that. All this stuff here, relationship status, so all this stuff I don't pay that much attention to. It is useful if you're really trying to optimize your ads at a high level, but what I like using is just this page likes tab, and this will just give you a bunch of interest to target. So if you just go to page likes, scroll down here, you can press see more, and this will just give you a massive list of interests that you could target based on the affinity. And what the affinity means is how likely is your target audience going to be in this interest versus any other audience on Facebook. So that's a pretty bad explanation, but for example, in this page right here, Eat to Perform, they have an audience of 350,000 people who like Lululemon out of 1.3 million. So it's basically telling you that this page right here has it shares a lot of the same audience as Lululemon, and so does J.Crew, Beachbody. So all these pages share the same audience as Lululemon. So these are all potential interests that you could target with Facebook. So what I like to do is I like to look for interests that have at least 1 mil in monthly active people. So most of these would be fine. You know, these all have like relatively large audience size. So you could literally test all these interests one by one and see which one's working. If you've already been running ads for this store and you already have people who are liking your page on Facebook, you can actually click here and select your page, and it'll give you these same affinity groups for your page. So this data will be even better as long as you have like over, you know, probably over 5,000 page likes. You'll be able to get some affinity groups that you could target, but that's only if you already have data. If you don't, the best way is probably just to go off your competitors' data. So once you've done your audience research, the next step is to do some split testing for your creatives to find your winning ad. So this is a step that a lot of people skip, but it's really important, and it can be the difference between your campaign being successful or failing. So what you want to do is usually start off with at least 3 ads and split test them to find out which one's doing the best, and then you're just going to use that one ad for the majority of your campaigns until that ad stops performing. So the way that I like to set up my split tests is I'll actually have just one ad set for each ad, so one ad set with one ad in each ad set, and I'll target a really broad demographic worldwide. So let's say I'm selling just a really broad product that applies to everyone, has a mass appeal. I'll usually just target everyone, so 18 to 65 plus worldwide, pay per engagement, and just one ad in each ad set. And then I'll have usually a $10 budget per ad set, and I'll have that for each ad. And then I'll leave it running for a little bit. You don't need a big budget for these ads because since you're targeting worldwide PPE, you're going to get a ton of engagement really cheap. So this is great, first of all, for social proof. It's great to start getting data about who's responding most to your ad. And it's most importantly, it's great to find out which one of your ads will perform the best in the auction. So how you can determine which one of your ads is the best, you can look at the cost per engagement, since that's the objective of the campaign. So you can see which one's bringing in engagement at a cheaper cost. That's usually a sign that it's probably a better ad. And you can also look at the cost per ad to cart. So if you have an ad that's getting a ton of engagement, but no one's actually adding the stuff to cart, maybe your ad isn't actually really good at selling the product, it's just good at being seen a lot. So you kind of need to factor in both your cost per engagement and your cost per ad to cart. If you have some purchases, you can also go off of that, but usually at a $10 worldwide PPE campaign, you probably won't get any sales. You probably will just get a lot of add to carts. So yeah, look at your cost per engagement and your cost per add to cart and determine which one of your ads is performing the best. Once your winning ad starts getting close to 100,000 views, which shouldn't take too long because once again, we're targeting worldwide, so engagement is really cheap. This is when you can build a 95% video viewers custom audience, and we're going to use that to test our first lookalike audiences. So if you're unfamiliar with lookalike audiences, they're actually really simple and they're a really useful tool, and you should definitely start using them. So how they work is that they find the people most similar to a given custom audience. So you can use any custom audience. You can use, for example, Instagram engagement in the last 30 days. You can use an email list. You can use any action on your pixel. And you can feed it that custom audience, and Facebook's going to give you back a larger audience that most closely matches the audience that you initially gave it. So if you, for example, make that custom audience of 95% video viewers from your winning video ad, you're going to have an audience of people who watched the majority of your video and who were obviously interested in the product to a certain extent, right? And then now you're going to give that audience to Facebook, and it's going to give you an audience of people similar to those people. So people who are likely to watch the majority of your video and be interested in your product. So at this point, you should have already done your audience research. You should have a list of interests that you're planning on targeting. You should also have already split tested your creatives and found which one of your creatives is performing the best. Now we can enter the testing phase, and this is when you're going to test as much stuff as possible to figure out what's working and what you should scale. So when you're starting out the testing phase, you want to scale horizontally, and what that means is you want to test as many different audiences as possible. So create a ton of different ad sets with different audiences to test and figure out what's working. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is that you want to use the same post ID for each one of your video ads so that all the social proof gets added to the same ad rather than creating a new ad every time. So just to quickly show you how you use the same post ID for all your ads, when you're creating your ad, you don't want to create it in the ads manager. You want to use an existing post. So you'll want to make the post on your Facebook page beforehand, and then when you're creating the ad, you just go to use existing post, and then you select your post. And that way, it'll actually add up all the engagement to this one post ID. And now when you create a new ad, you can either just copy this post ID, or you can just duplicate the one and it'll use the same post. So make sure that you're using the same post. If it's the same video, make sure that it's all in one post versus a bunch of versions of the same video ad. So when I'm starting out the testing phase, I'll usually test out two different things. So number one is the 95% video viewers lookalike audiences. So we built a 95% video viewers custom audience using the video views we got from targeting worldwide. Now we can use that custom audience, build a lookalike audience, and test it for the top countries. So for the United States, the UK, Canada, and Australia. And you want to test all different percents. So 2%, 2 to 5%, and 5 to 10% is usually what I'll test. So besides the 95% video viewers lookalike audience, you also want to test all the interests that you found during your audience research. So the targeting that I'll usually use is I'll start with all countries that I can ship to, which is usually the e-packet countries. And if you want a list of all the e-packet countries, just click in the description. There's a link to the notes from this video, and you'll be able to just copy and paste all the e-packet countries and paste them in the ads manager to make it easy for you. And then yeah, so I'll have one interest per ad set. So one interest that I identified during the audience research phase, and then the age range and gender, also what you identified during audience research. And if you're not sure, just leave it broad and Facebook will optimize it for you, right? So if your target audience is women and you select both men and women, Facebook will naturally start delivering it to women only because they have really smart algorithms and they know who your target audience is. But if you know that it's just women, you might as well just select women so that you don't show it to any guys. You also want to select English as the language just to make sure, since we're targeting all e-packet countries, there's some countries where English isn't the native language, and you want to make sure that they understand your site and can interact with you. Lastly, for placements, what I'll usually test is feed only, so Instagram feed and Facebook feed. That's what I start out of because since we're using video ads, those are the two placements that are really optimized for video ads. Now I just want to answer a question that I get asked a lot, and it's how much budget should I start off with during the testing phase? And basically, it doesn't really matter. So you can start with $5 ad sets, $10 ad sets, or $50 ad sets. They all work fine, depending on how fast you're trying to scale. So the main difference is really how fast you're getting data, right? Because during the testing phase, we're not trying to build these ad sets for long term. We're trying to just test and see what's working. So the bigger your budget when you're starting out is just really how much data you're going to get within a day. So for example, if you're starting out with $5 ad sets, that's fine. You're just going to need to wait 4 or 5 days to get enough data to actually make a decision, right? But if you're trying to really make an aggressive, if you're trying to scale aggressively, you can start with $50 ad sets, and you can see after spending about $25 or your break-even point, you can see already whether or not it's a good audience to target. So I personally always test out with $50 ad sets, but you can definitely use $5 ad sets, $10 ad sets, they're fine. It's just a matter of how long you're willing to wait to get the data. So usually I say that you need to spend at least $20 on an ad set before you can make any statistically significant decision. Even $20 is not a lot to spend, but I know that a lot of you have budget constraints, so I'm trying to keep it low. So yeah, you need to spend at least $20 on an ad set to make a decision. So basically, use whatever you want, $5, $10, $50 ad sets. During the testing phase, it doesn't really matter. One important thing to understand about Facebook ads is the ad set learning phase. So when you create a new ad set, it needs conversion data to optimize within 7 days. So it has a learning phase that lasts 7 days, and it needs 50 conversions at least to properly optimize, and that's what's recommended by Facebook. So if you're launching $5 ad sets, it's not going to be able to properly optimize within those 7 days because you're not going to get the 50 conversions needed. So for that reason, Facebook actually recommends a bid to budget ratio of at least 1 to 10. And what this means is that if your average cost per purchase is $15, they recommend that your budget per ad set be at least $150. And they actually say that 1 to 25 is better. So you need to have these larger budget ad sets so that the learning phase can go smoothly and Facebook can get all the conversion information it needs within that learning phase. So that's why I say $5, $10, $50 ad sets for testing are all fine, because regardless, they're all not enough to properly optimize within the learning phase. So once you find your winning ad sets, that's when you want to try to scale them to the point where Facebook can actually properly optimize during the learning phase and spend the budget accurately. So I just have a few more tips for the testing phase. Number one is to keep creating as many new ad sets as possible every day to test new angles and to imitate what's already working well for you. So for example, if you have an interest that you're targeting and it's doing really well, it's getting a lot of sales, you can put in that interest into the audience insights tool that I showed you at the start and find similar interests to target. And if the first interest was working well, similar interests will likely work well too. And the more ad sets you have that are profitable, the more you're going to be able to scale once we get to the scaling phase. The goal is really to have as many ad sets, as many different ad sets as possible that are profitable and that you can scale. You can also test combining your best interests with engaged shoppers. What engaged shoppers is it's basically a behavior on Facebook for people that have clicked the Shop Now button on an ad within the last 7 days. So usually it's a good sign. You know, if people click a lot of ads, it means that they're more engaged and they're more likely to buy your product. So a lot of people always test with engaged shoppers right from the start. What I like to do is I like just testing, combining it with my best interest. So I don't test it right away when I'm testing the interest. I'll just have the single interest. But if I find an interest that's doing well, I'll duplicate it and I'll add engaged shoppers and see how that performs as well. So engaged shoppers is something you definitely want to split test. Another tip is that larger audiences tend to work best because it gives Facebook more room to optimize, right? If you give it a very narrow audience, it doesn't have a lot of room to optimize, and oftentimes if you have a narrow audience, the CPMs are going to be much higher because there's more people bidding towards that audience, right? Because you're being picky about who you want to show your ad to. So then naturally, there's going to be more people bidding to that specific audience, right? So when you give it a narrow audience, your CPMs are going to be higher, and Facebook will have less room to optimize. So it can work sometimes, you know, for very niche products, people like to have narrow audiences and they have great success with it. But personally, for my style of dropshipping, I like targeting larger audiences, 5 million plus usually, and it just gives room for Facebook to optimize and it'll do a lot better. Lastly, another great tip is you want to use the breakdown tool to find your winning audiences within broader audiences. So if you're targeting a broad audience and it's doing okay, but like it's just breaking even or something like that, you can use the breakdown tool to see if there's any specific demographic that you could target that would have a much lower cost per purchase. So I'm actually going to show you an example of that right now. Alright, so for an example, this is a really broad interest that I was testing, targeting all e-packet countries, and as you can see, the ad was doing pretty well. Spent 3.6 grand to make 7. So return on ad spend 1.95, which is pretty good because our break-even return on ad spend for this store is about 1.5. So this was profitable. But if I wanted to go and see actually if I can look more in depth to find audiences that are converting better within that large audience. So what you can do is you can use this breakdown tool here, and you can break it down. So by delivery is what you want to click on, and then you can break it down by all these things. So my favorite breakdowns, number one is age and gender, just to tell you what demographic you should be targeting. So breaking down this ad set, if we can go and we can now sort it by website purchases, and let's see which audience did the most purchases. And as you can see, it's 25 to 34 females. And the cost per result is 16.47 instead of 19. So as you can see, if we targeted just 25 to 34 females, maybe we'd be able to get a much lower cost per conversion. You can also go in and break it down by country, which is also really interesting, right? So as you can see, for this specific ad set, Facebook optimized it mainly towards the United Kingdom. It seems like this was the country that was performing the best for us. So now we could go and duplicate this ad set, but targeting only the United Kingdom, and see what happens. So when you're in the testing phase, you want to make sure that you're continually optimizing and killing ad sets that are clearly not providing results to make sure that you're not wasting money. So first off, you want to calculate your break-even return on ad spend, and this is a really important metric to know. And you can calculate it simply just by doing the product sale price over the product sale price minus the product cost. So if you're selling something really cheap, like this teeth whitening pen here that costs you $1.30 shipped, and you're selling it for $10 on your store, you can calculate your break-even ROAS just by doing 10 over 10 minus 1.3. So the sale price over sale price minus the product cost. And this will give you your break-even ROAS. And as you can see, the break-even ROAS for a cheap product, when you have really good margins, is really low. So all you need is a 1.15 ROAS to break even with this product. On the other hand, if you choose something a little bit more expensive and your margins aren't as good, the break-even ROAS is going to be a lot higher. So for example, this backpack costs $41. Even if you were to sell it for $100 on your site, right? Let's calculate what the break-even ROAS would be. So it would be 100 divided by 100 minus 41. And the break-even ROAS, as you can see, would be 1.7. So, a lot higher than 1.15. So you need to keep this in mind, how much margin you have and what your break-even ROAS is, so that you know and you can analyze the performance of your campaigns. So once you know what your break-even ROAS is, what you want to do is you'll want to always look at the last 5 days of data, including your current day, and kill any ad set that's below your break-even return on ad spend, because you know that that ad set is losing you money. And the reason why I choose to look at the last 5 days of data is just to kind of factor out variability as much as possible, because obviously some days your ad sets are not going to perform well and some they're going to perform really well. So you want to look at least 5 days of data just to kind of average it out and get something that's actually meaningful, instead of just like one bad day and then you kill an ad set that could have been really profitable. So yeah, look at the last 5 days and kill anything below your break-even return on ad spend. Another tip is, if you're not getting any purchases, if you're testing with like $5 ad sets and you don't have any purchases to evaluate the performance of your ad sets, what you can do is you can just move back one step to the next lowest level of the funnel. So if you don't have any purchases, you can move back up to add to carts, for example, and you can look at your cost per add to cart compared to your other ad sets and see if it's at a key performance indicator, if it's way too high and it's not going to be profitable. If you know that your cost per add to cart is way too high, you can kill it right away without even having to wait for any purchases. An important thing to keep in mind is that if your cold traffic campaigns are just breaking even, you can still be profitable overall by running retargeting. So don't worry if you're just breaking even on your cold traffic campaigns, that's still good. You're buying data and you're getting people to your site, and then you can retarget them. So you can still be profitable if your cold traffic campaigns are just breaking even. Alright, so now we're getting to scaling, which is the fun part. So the goal is to gradually scale your top performing ad sets to higher budgets so that Facebook can properly optimize them. So like I mentioned earlier, Facebook recommends a bid to budget ratio of 1 to 10, which means that your budget should be at least 10 times your average cost per purchase. So if your cost per purchase is $15, your ad sets should be at least $150 daily budget. So that's why you want to gradually scale them. So if you're starting out at $5, you don't want to switch right away to 200 because you have no idea how to perform. So what I usually like doing is 5 to 20, and then 20 to 50 if it's still working well, and then 50 to 200 if it's still working well, and then 200 is the point where the learning phase will actually be able to optimize properly usually. So $200 budget is a good place to be at. But if you want to take it even further, you can actually duplicate your $200 budget and duplicate it to $500 or more budget and start using manual bidding. Now this is a lot more advanced, but this is when you can really scale. So just to quickly show you how you can set up manual bidding, you would just duplicate your ad set. So your ad set, you should at least have tried it at $200 with lowest cost bidding, which is the default setting. And if that's working well, that's when you can even start to consider manual bidding. So don't jump right into manual bidding as like a miracle solution to make your campaigns profitable. You only want to use manual bidding when your campaigns are already profitable and you want to scale it to the next level. So then you'll just duplicate this ad set and you want to scroll to the bottom where there's the auction settings. It's a little laggy. Here we go. And then this is where, so bid strategy, lowest cost by default, and manual bidding. When people say manual bidding, they're just referring to lowest cost with a bid cap. So you would just set a bid cap, and usually you want to start at a bid cap of about 3 times your target cost per purchase. So let's say your cost per purchase is $15. You could start at a bid cap of $45, and then you want to adjust it. So usually you want to start higher, which is why we're doing 3 times. People recommend 2 to 3 times your target cost per purchase. I like to start off at 3 times, and then you can see how it's performing. And if it's delivering conversions at a lower cost than 45, you can actually keep lowering the bid cap as much as you can to try to get lower conversions. So this requires a lot of mastery. You need to practice it for yourself and play around with the bid cap. So I don't recommend using manual bidding if you're a beginner, but if you're trying to scale your campaigns, it's definitely something that you want to play around and test with. So once you start scaling and you're getting consistent traffic to your site every day, you want to launch a retargeting campaign as soon as possible, because like I mentioned earlier, even if you're just breaking even with your cold traffic campaigns, you can still be profitable overall with retargeting, because the majority of your profits are going to come from retargeting. So there's no one-size-fits-all solution for a retargeting funnel. There's a lot of different ways you can set it up based on what you want to show your audience, but this is a basic funnel that you could set up, and that usually works pretty well. This is what I used for most of my stores. So you would target VC in the last 7 days, so people who viewed your content in the last 7 days, excluding people who've added to cart. So this would be the top level of the funnel, people who are just kind of aware of your website, but they really haven't shown any interest of buying the product yet. Next, you can target add to cart in the last 7 days, excluding people who've initiated checkout. So this is like a level down. And then same thing, initiated checkout in the last 7 days, excluding people who've bought in the last 7 days. So these are the people who, really your warmest audience, right? People who are ready to buy, but they just left their checkout and abandoned it. So this is really the most profitable, I would say, out of all of them, is the initiate checkout in the last 7 days. Now you can also retarget people who viewed content in the last 30 days, excluding people who viewed your content in the last 7 days, just so there's no overlap with this first ad set over here, and excluding people who've purchased in the last 30 days, just to make sure that you're not targeting people who've already bought. Same thing here, you can target people who viewed 75% of your video ad in the last 30 days, excluding people who've already bought in the last 30 days. And people who viewed 75% of your ad, they're already aware of your company, right? They already know who you are, and so it's much easier to sell them a product versus selling it to cold traffic. Last thing for retargeting, you want to have automatic placements on to remove any delivery constraints. So when you're just selecting feed for Instagram and Facebook, it's really limiting how much Facebook can show your ads to these people, versus when you have automatic placements, your ad will be shown a lot more. One thing to keep in mind when you're using automatic placements is that you need to have content for every type of placement. So you should have at least 1 video, 1 photo, and if this is applicable to your store, a dynamic product ad. And if you don't know what those are, just look online. I'm not going to be covering that in the video, but they are super powerful. So at this point, your pixel should be getting a lot of data and a lot of actions being taken on it. And this is when you can actually start testing a lot of different lookalike audiences to find what's working. So at the start, we only tested the 95% video viewers lookalike audience because that one is easy to get data for. But something like a purchase lookalike audience or like add to cart, you need a lot more data on your pixel. So this is kind of something you do later on once you're getting consistent traffic and you have a lot of data on your pixel. So my personal favorite lookalike audiences to test are purchase value-based. So the value-based purchase lookalike audience is actually really powerful. Facebook takes into account all the people who've bought your product, but they also take into account how much they've spent on your store total to find people who are more likely to buy and spend a lot on your store. So the value-based purchase lookalike works great, and I definitely recommend you trying that out once you have enough data. Another one you can try out is the top 25% visitors by time spent. You don't need as much data for this one. You just need a lot of visitors, which isn't hard to get. And it works a lot better than just a simple view content lookalike audience if you do the top 25% visitors by time spent. So I've had a lot of success with this one, and I definitely recommend it. And then 95% video viewers, I already talked about this one. So I'm not going to be going too in depth into how you can scale with lookalike audiences because I already covered it in one of my videos on the channel. So if you're interested in that, make sure to check it out. Before I end this video, I just have 2 more tips that I want to share with you guys on how you can get more consistent results over a long period of time with Facebook ads. So in my experience, the main reason why your return on ad spend drops over time is ad fatigue. And there's 2 reasons. Number one is that people steal a lot of content, and so people will take your content and advertise it to their audience, and naturally there's going to be some overlap, and so your audience is just going to see the same creative a lot and eventually get tired of it and scroll right past it and not react to it anymore. Second is Facebook also doesn't like you using the same creative over and over again. So if it sees that you've been using the same ad for a long period of time, it's naturally going to start throttling the delivery and showing it to less people. So 2 things that you should get out of that. Number one is properly watermark your content. When you make a new video ad, always watermark it. And when I say watermark, don't just put a logo in the top right corner. You want to have a about 30% opacity logo right in the center so that people can't edit it out and that it's your content and they know for sure. So properly watermark your content and no one's going to be able to steal it. Number 2 is continually create new video content. Even if you have one ad that's doing really well for you right now, don't just sit on it, prepare the next one. So continually plan your next ads and plan to have new content consistently to fight ad fatigue. Otherwise, I guarantee you that your return on ad spend is going to drop over time and your campaigns are going to stop being profitable. Alright everyone, so that is pretty much it for this complete guide on Facebook ads for e-commerce and dropshipping in 2019. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I put a lot of time into making this and keeping it free. So if you did like it, please make sure to like and subscribe. Also, if you want the text notes from this video, you can click the link in the description. It says notes from video and you'll be able to go to my website where I have all the notes from this video in an easy to read manner so you can just keep track of them without having to rewatch the whole video. And lastly, if you have any questions or you just want to connect with me, the best place to do so is in my private Facebook group for this channel. That's the first link in the description, so you can just join that group and I try to respond to everyone on there, and we have a community of people who are helping each other out. So make sure to join that Facebook group. And that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks a lot for watching this, and I'll see you next time.